Hey there, my name is Brandon Howe, and welcome back to my Making a Game series. In the last episode, we fine-tuned our enemies and their shooting and the player and its shooting, so that the enemies only start shooting when they've reached a certain point as they're just about to enter the game area, and the player's shots when they leave the game area, they get destroyed immediately, so they're not destroying enemies that haven't come into play yet. As well, we've set up a score system. So we have, when enemies get destroyed, they increment our score by a certain amount. Different enemies can be worth different amounts, and all of that. Woo. And we have it showing up nicely on the screen. So now, I'd say, or in this episode, I'd say we've been looking at cubes and all that long enough. So I'd say it's time for us to improve our models. So to start off simple, we're going to start off by improving our player and enemy shots. Just ease into it, I suppose. So now we're going to be jumping over into Blender, and we're going to be improving some models. So hopefully you have some experience using Blender. I'm going to be keeping things pretty simple and low poly and all of that, no textures or anything. Usually when you're doing that stuff, you'd probably use something like Photoshop, but I want to try and keep this series completely free where I can, so Photoshop ain't going to cut it for us. So we're going to try and stick to a simpler, simple colored, low poly style with this game. So now we're going to start off by I'm going to make the enemy shot first because I have a better idea. I have ideas in my head of what I want them to look like. I was kind of experimenting with stuff earlier, and the enemy shot will be easier to make. So first of all, I'm going to delete this cube, and I'm going to add in a cone. So I'm also going to, over here, the vertices around the side, I'm going to lower that. I'm going to divide it by 2. And then now I'm going to rotate it on the x-axis, or y-axis, by 90 degrees. I'm also going to rename it up here from cone to enemy shot. And then I'm also going to, we colored it orange, right? Yeah. So I'm also going to, actually I'm going to do that. The material that already exists, I'm going to call it enemy shot. I can spell enemy shot, and I'm going to make it a nice orange color, a brighter orange. This is lasers, it's all light and should be bright. I did not mean for that to rhyme, but it did. Alright, so now I'm going to stretch it on the x-axis by 2. So now I've got a nice pointy cone shape. It looks menacing. But now, a lot of this, trying to make what was a cylinder interesting. I was just kind of experimenting around with different things, and something that I did kind of accidentally that I thought looked kind of cool was selecting every other vertex here and then scaling it down, and it makes a cool pointy shape. So we're going to do that because it looks cool. As well, you can then go over here and start to this thing that looks like a wrench, which is modifiers. You can add a modifier and experiment with just adding different things and seeing what they do. Like you could add this bevel modifier. That's interesting. You could increase that, and woo, you got quite an interesting effect here. However, something as well to keep in mind is with our game, this shot is going to be pretty small and not very seen. So we kind of don't want it to be too crazy. You can also do something like this. Ooh. And then you can do something like this. And yeah, then you could also go in and apply that and then make this part a different color. You can make it like yellow if you wanted to. Heh. Bam. That's something you can do. But we're going to keep it a bit simple. I'm going to undo all of that. Just random little things that you can try. Typically, the bevel modifier, the subdivision surface modifier, triangulate, wireframe, those tend to give interesting results. There's probably others here that you can mess with. Like you could have, using this thing called a Boolean modifier, you can create a new mesh object. I could create a cube. I could go like this and like this, and then with this Boolean modifier, select the cube, and then if I hide the cube for a second, I can have this object look like this, where it intersected with the cube. Or I can change this to difference, and now it looks like it has a hole in it. This is actually, if you're trying to make something have a hole in it or something like that, this is a great way to do it using the Boolean modifier. That's how you could have like text engraved on a wall or things like that. So that's all helpful. But anyway, so I'm just going to stick with this simple design for now. Actually, what happens if I... let me try one thing. If I select this and bevel it, and hit V so it's beveling the vertices, and set that just to 2. No, I don't like that. I'm just going to stick with that. So now I'm going to save this, and let's go all the way to where I have this game saved, all the way over to here. We're going to put it in the models folder, and we're going to call it enemy shot. Simple as that. So now we're going to go back on into Blender, and then we're going to swap out these projectiles. So we're going to wait for it to import into Blender, and bam, we have this shot and it exists. So we're going to set a few things. So this shot isn't going to be animated at all. It's just going to fly forward. So I'm going to set this rig thing to none and import animation. I'm going to uncheck that. As well, I'm going to set normals over here from import to calculate. And then if we're going to want everything to be low poly, the smoothing angle I'm going to set to 0. And that should be that. So then I'm going to hit apply here. As well, the material over here, we made that material, that enemy shot that we colored orange. I made that as a temporary thing, so it kind of matches the color that we were going for initially, but I'm going to go back to using the orange color that we made. Yeah. But that's kind of a personal preference thing. If I had a bunch of things that all use this like small amount of colors, that I think saved stuff with memory and all that, which isn't really important at all for a small game like this, but could be important or whatever. Also, maybe sticking to like a sort of color palette could help with a certain artistic style and that sort of stuff. But whatever. Anyway, so now we're going to open up our enemy shot prefab and we're going to swap out the models. So we're going to do that by just going to this mesh filter and swapping out capsule for our enemy shot. And whoa, that did not have the effect that I thought it would. Okay, actually, because this is all scaled and whatnot, better idea. Instead of trying to swap this out, I'm actually going to get the model here. I'm actually going to make this model a child object of the enemy shot. Oh boy, that's an interesting result. Oh, one other thing I didn't do over here. Oh, I didn't delete the Boolean modifier. I should probably do that. I'm going to want to apply the rotation and the scale. Control A, rotation and scale. Having these all set to 1 and these to 0 helps, I guess. So we're going to do that. Go back here, wait for it to re-import. Oh, okay, it's facing either the right direction or exactly the wrong direction. We'll figure that out. So now I'm going to, let's see here. So I'm going to want to modify this scale to kind of match. I'm going to focus on this being about the same size as the cube is here. So I think making that about half the size. That kind of matched what it was before. And then I'm going to take the capsule collider and make that 4. That kind of matches. Actually, if I just hit... no. Yeah, so then I'm going to make that about bigger. Working with this to that. We could make... there's no, like... thinking about this. We can make like a custom collider thing that's shaped like a cone and sub that in here. It's called a mesh collider. But I think for now, if we just make that 1, that's probably good enough. I think we'll see if the collision, when that hits the player, if it feels fair or whatnot. Yeah. So then now we also want to get rid of the capsule that we had prior. Bam. So now our enemy shot exists, and I might actually just bump it slightly that way. A quick 1, I guess. Just small tweaking, I guess. So now going back out of this, our enemy shot should just kind of work now. So bam, it exists. I don't know if it's going to be facing the right direction. Our enemies might be shooting backwards, but we're about to find out. So coming in, our enemies that shoot should be here any second now. And they're shooting exactly backwards. Alright, so I mean, they're shooting our fancy new shot, so that's kind of what we want. So now I think I can just go over here and then rotate this. I'm going to want it to face over this way. -90. Actually, back out of all that. Let me just change this to negative there. With the way that Blender's coordinate system is relative to Unity, it adds a negative 90-degree tilt, angle, turn, whatever, just to sort of compensate because they kind of use different axes. Like this, in Unity, up is the y-axis, and in Blender, up is the z-axis. So compensating for stuff like that. So now our enemies are shooting successfully the way we want them to. Cool. So now that's more fancy schmancy. So now we're going to do the same for the player shot. So I'm going to go and open up a new Blender file again. So now we're going to do the same thing for the player. So we're going to delete this cube, and from my experimenting, a lot of this, with the player making a ship for that, that's something I guess you could draw out and then make and look at reference material and all that. But I guess making a laser interesting was kind of, I don't know, difficult, I suppose, to try to come up with something unique for that. If you're artistic and creative enough, then the hats off to you if you can come up with something easily. But I found just kind of experimenting around in Blender with just, I don't know, trying out random different tools, kind of came up with something that looked kind of cool. So anyway, so I made a sphere here, and I made it having a lot less vertices, kind of fit that low poly thing, and now I'm going to rename it to player shot over here, and then materials, I'm going to bring this in, I'm going to call it player shot, even though this is our only temporary player shot, just so it kind of matches the color of what we had before. There we go. Alright, so, and I'll bring that up so it's brighter. So now I'm going to go into edit mode, and not that. I'm going to rotate it on its side by 90 degrees. Actually, yeah, no, sorry, I'm going to want to rotate it on the y-axis by 90 degrees. If this is kind of the front, well, actually, if that's the front direction, it should probably face it. Whatever, it's fine. So I'm going to go here and into edit mode, switch to orthographic mode. I'm going to select half of this sphere, and I'm going to extrude it out by 2, by 4. Bam. And then I'm going to select everything, hit end to open up this thing, and move all this to the global 0 position. Whoa, oh, that did not move how I thought it was. Okay, I'm going to select this thing here so that you actually see through the whole model. Then go to the front view, select everything I meant to, and then hit E. Then go out by 4, yes. There we go. Now select everything, and then go like this. Then I'm going to scale it down by 0.5, just so it's a smaller shot. And now, trying to remember what I did before for this. Also I'm going to just save it right now, I guess, as player shot. Shot. Whether you have spaces or not doesn't really matter for this, but being consistent helps. So what I believe what I tried doing was adding 3 loop cuts to this. Actually, no, wait, sorry, I remember what I did, yes. So I took this and only extended it by 2, then put that to 0, then scaled it on the x-axis by 2, so these parts kind of get stretched out of it. There we go. Now, I'm going to give this 3 loop cuts. That was hitting Control R. That's how you can add cuts, and then you can, like, have more geometry to work with. And then scrolling up on the scroll wheel, you can increase the number of cuts you add. I'm going to add 3. And then I'm going to select not every other one, but just those 3. And then I'm going to scale them in, but so they scale in relative to themselves. I'm actually just going to hit, so you hit a certain axis, that'll control which axis you're scaling them on. If you hit Shift and then an axis, it'll be everything except that axis. So going Shift X will be everything but the X-axis, so the Z and the Y. I'm going to do that by 0.5, and then I'm going to hit Control B to bevel, and then I'm going to do this, I guess. Whoa. And I'll go that by 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, like this. Yeah, that's an interesting looking thing, I guess. It's what we're going to use, I suppose. Yeah, and it's not all pointy like the player shot, or like the enemy shot, making them look more hazardous than this. So, player shot, we got that. Cool. Now I'm going to go back into Unity, and it's going to be the same process for swapping out the shots. Eventually, when we get to the player and hazards and all that, it's going to get a lot more complex because we're going to deal with actually animating stuff, probably, with like, well, actually I'm not completely sure how much animator we're going to have to do in this specific case, but we might have, like, when an enemy shoots, have some form of animation for that. And we're also going to eventually create things like a jet trail for the ships, but that'll be its own thing. I guess we'll be dealing with particle systems for that, but that's going to be way down the line when we deal with more polishing. But anyway, so now we're going to go into this player shot, open that up, go to our models, this player shot thing here, and then we're going to set these to be the same as before, with no animations, then this to calculate, this to 0, and this, actually I'm going to hit apply first, let all that do, and then we're going to open this up and then change that to that yellow so that it gets overridden. Cool, so now we're going to want to actually swap these out, and I'm going to do the same thing as before where I drag and drop this as a child object. And also, these scales are good, cool. Alright, over to here. So again, this is all wonky. We're going to want to, I'll rotate, not that way, this way, no, this, okay, this, actually how are these rotated? Alright, so we're going to, I'll take this and then rotate it one of these directions. Whoa, that way, I guess. We'll go 90. And then, back to here, the same thing, because these were kind of the same sizes, making that 0.3, but then taking this and making it bigger, and then going and finding the capsule and deleting that. Alright, and then I guess I'll make this ever so slightly bigger in radius. With with a player shot, you might want to give the player a small bit of lenience by making the player shot's collider slightly bigger. And then likewise, you might do the opposite with an enemy shot, making its collider slightly smaller. In fact, I think I might actually go do that. Over in prefabs, enemy shot. Yeah, this is like a weird one here with the player. It kind of worked out fine, but I'm actually just going to go and make... Actually, being a bit flip-floppy. Actually, that goes a bit past the end. 0.1 go... Oh, 0.1 went the opposite direction that I thought it did, so I want to go the other direction, maybe 0.9. Alright, so now we have both those shots, and let's test them out. Now, player shot, actually, because it's symmetrical, it doesn't matter if it's shooting the right way or not. So cool, we got player shot being shot, and then when our enemies come in, we have them shooting, and it looks more menacing. Now, one other thing that we can do is having these shots, having them kind of be animated just a little bit. Not through actually animating, but through scripting, as we can have them spin. And we're going to do that through coding. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to our scripts. We're going to make another script, I guess, called Rotator. And this, I think, will be not rotating through physics, but through just the transform, because we're going to use this for things we want to have spin, again, not through physics, just through, because they're probably, in this case, it's a child object of something that's being controlled via physics, so we're going to actually have this be on the model itself, and then spin it with that. So I'm actually going to go right away before I forget and add the rotator script to our enemy shot, and then I'm going to also go to the player shot and do the same right now. Rotator, add that. So now, not here, over here, rotator, we're going to want to rotate the player. So we're going to make, we're going to start by making a public vector 3 called dir, like direction, which is a kind of a short form, I suppose. And then in the update function, we're going to go transform dot rotation, or dot rotate dir. And I think it'll be as simple as that. Hopefully. Oh, as well, actually, we're going to actually have to set the direction on here. So with this one, I guess it's the y-axis, so we're going to set that to like 10 as kind of a speed. And then I'm actually going to then go back to the enemy shot and then do the same. With this rotating also on the y-axis. Oh, not 90, we'll go 10 with that. I don't know if that's going to be too much or too little, so we're just going to have to test it out. Whoa, alright, now... Oh, it's interesting, that's for sure. I mean, it looks cool, but it's not what we want. Alright, so I'm actually going to just deal with the enemy shot, get its numbers right, and then I'll go back to the player. So, and I'll hope that it's the same. So now going in, setting it to the X instead. This is just guessing. I have a 1 in 3 chance, hopefully. So now, please. I can't tell if those are spinning or not. Let me go and check that. Whoa. Over here, its rotation. It's like -30, so I think it is rotating. Alright, so I think it is rotating. It's just kind of hard to tell. I can't tell if it's rotating too fast or too slow. It seems to be rotating by 10. Is that too fast? Oh. As well, another thing actually I just realized I should probably do. The direction, I'm going to multiply it by time.delta time. Eventually when we pause the game by freezing time later, we're going to want to make sure that by multiplying it by this time.delta time, it'll make sure that when we do freeze things, that the shots won't keep spinning while things are frozen. As well, I'm going to go, which means that we're going to have to then set that direction to larger than it was to compensate over here. So I'm going to set that to, that's 0.2, so that's 0.2. So time delta time is usually like, I think 0.02. So that's going to turn this into 0.2. So like that's turning that into 0.2 as much. So actually if I went 10 divided by 0.02, that should then make it the same as it was before, hopefully. So now this, I'm also going to zero that out and make that 10, actually 500 as before, except, yeah, I'll make that the same 500. Alright, so now, hoping that this works. Okay, so I think it is, I'm pretty sure it is working, because they do appear to be spinning on the correct axes. It's just kind of difficult to tell because these are kind of cylindrical objects anyways. But on a bigger screen, then you can actually tell that. Yeah, so it's definitely, I think it's definitely rotating the way that we want it to. Yes. I'm like very skeptical because I think it is working. I just don't know because I can't actually see it. Yeah, these are all have different rotations, rotating on this axis. Okay, so 100% working. Alright, so we got that. Now, lastly, I want to do one more thing, and that's create our first enemy, which will be the hazard, this asteroid hazard, because it'll be the easiest to do. And we're also going to, this won't be animated, this will be using the same rotator script that we had before, or that we just made, and having this be an asteroid that spins. So going back to Blender, oh, I have something that isn't saved here. Alright, so then I'll go new, startup file, and now we're going to make an asteroid, I guess. So we're going to, So we're going to start, actually I think I actually will use this cube. I'm going to go and give it some loop cuts there, and then I'm going to turn on proportional editing. Just thinking about this for a second, about how I want to go about this. Actually, I'm going to call this asteroid, and I might give this, I might do that, and then I can go and start deforming it as I see fit, just to kind of make it more spherical. And then I can also go and select everything and hit this randomize button and increase that a lot. All right, and then I can hit this smooth vertex button as well to kind of make sure things aren't going through each other too much. This is all just being completely random. I also want to make sure that it's at least decently spherical because I'm probably going to be giving it a sphere collider. So just making sure, or maybe you have like a box collider. All right, that seems easy enough. Maybe I'll increase this by one more. No. Maybe what I'll do is having that set to 1, I'm actually going to apply it so now I have more stuff to work with, and then go and mess with it some more. Actually, I'll go and randomize it again. Nope, randomize it. Not quite that much. It's going like that. We want it to be decently... I'm going to make it pretty jagged, I think, because it'll help it stand out more detail-wise. If I make it too smooth, it might just kind of look around it anyway. Alright, this is our asteroid. You could also make different asteroid variations. I'm just going to stick with one for now. So this material, asteroid, and actually I guess it's going to be kind of like a darker gray there. And then actually, yeah, then that's it. So now I'm going to save it. I'm going to go asteroid. Alright. And now, that should be it. Going back to Blender, or Unity, going from Blender back to Unity, waiting for that to come back in. So now, models, over here, setting these again. This should be the last time we have to do all this because I think, well, some of the rest of the things that we make might be actually animated. I mean, this part's going to be the same. But yeah, and then setting this to our gray material, and then applying that. Shazam. Alright, actually that's not, give me just a few seconds. There's a side that's kind of flat. What side is that? Is that the bottom? I think that's the bottom. Yeah, just making it a bit more defined so it's not, because we want it to be decently kind of spherical looking. And over here, I guess. Alright, I also actually want to look at its... I go out of edit mode for a second to look at its dimensions. If I were to make these the exact same, that is in 2.5. Okay, if I make the dimensions the same, then it should help it be about the same size while still being all symmetrical, or spherical-ish, but being jagged. Alright, I'm actually also, this side's a bit, alright, just purely messing around. Alright. And I'll set that to the same thing as before, and then apply that. All right. Well, also we have something going on here. Making sure. All right. So now saving that, going back, letting that update again. All right. That is an asteroid. So now we're going to go to our hazard, open the prefab, and then go and make the model child object of the hazard, which seems to be about, it's bigger and kind of off-center. That's, actually, let me do something else. Let me select everything and then make this all 0 so it's kind of centered on its origin. Save that again. Actually, I may as well, I'll make this about half the size. I'll make these all 1.5, and then I think that'll be kind of similar to the size of the cube that we had over here. Letting it update again, then it should also be more centered. Alright, cool. So now I'm going to also add that rotator script, and I'm going to set it completely random values. Let's go, but on every axis. Let's go 15, 30, and 45. That might maybe give the results we want, but I don't know. Actually, these will need to be a lot bigger because of the time delta times thing. So I'm just going to multiply everything by 10 and hope that works. So now we're going to also want to get rid of the cube. Yeah, and do I want to make this I might make this a sphere collider. Actually, I think I'll leave it as a box collider. Since everything's kind of on a 2D plane anyway, it shouldn't. I mean, it kind of only matters on one axis. So 1.1, just kind of getting it sort of match. Actually, let me look at this from a top-down view and then sort of match it. Oh yeah, we're kind of very off. The y-axis shouldn't actually matter unless we had, like, I don't think there's really anything that's going to give our game depth, like 3D depth. You could have an enemy that shoots a projectile that, like, comes up and then comes down. That's an option. But we're not going to be doing that here. So, that looks good to me. This has the rotator. Alright, so now I'm going to hit play and go into that and, ooh, it's working, but it's fast. Alright, as well, yeah, alright, so now it's, oh, there's also an error here that I will look into in a moment, but first I'm just going to finish dealing with this asteroid. So, where was I going? Over to Prefabs, Hazard, Open U. I guess that's spinning that fast, I'm going to get rid of the times 10 multipliers. And then go back into it, and now it should rotate at a nice speed. Alright, I think I like that. As well, yeah, still deciding. You know, okay, I'm going to multiply all these by 2. I want a decent amount of speed, but I don't need too much. Again, more just guess and checking. That's what a lot of this tends to be. And then as you just get used to it and have more practice, then, yeah, you can kind of just get a good feel for what numbers tend to work. So now we got our hazards that are making our game look nicer. We got our enemy shots, and we have the player shots. Now, let me figure out what is this problem here. So, where is... Oh, wait, something... Our canvas and our score text. Is something happening with that? Hold on. Oh, wait. Let me just run through this for a second and see what is something. What's happening here? Is the canvas? No. Okay, slightly worrying. I don't know what's causing that error, unless it was just had to do with me messing with the hazards. Oh, hold up. I have a guess of what it might be. I think reloading the scene might be causing problems. Let me test that theory. Let me purposely get destroyed and then restart. Is that... Aha! Okay. Now that's interesting. So when I restart the scene, object... Okay, what is trying to access it? Score text.txt... Alright, I'm gonna be back in 2 seconds. I'm gonna figure out what this problem is. Alright, so figuring out the problem. Basically, back with our score system, our enemy score, we're calling it on disable. When we reload the scene, all these undisables are running and it's causing problems. So what we should be doing instead of having this run in the on disable function, we should go to when an enemy is destroyed, through that code, call the score UI stuff. So we're going to be having to go through to our shot destroy and doing it that way. So when we collide with an enemy, this is where we're destroying the enemy. So when we do this, we're going to want to call the score stuff through here, which means I guess what we'll do is if other dot get component score enemy score, bam, bam, bam. All right, then. So if it has a get score or an enemy score component, then it's gonna get that reference enemy score. So we want to test if it has the script first, because if we have an enemy that we're like testing out and we haven't added a score thing to it, we want this to still work. So other dot get component enemy score dot. I guess we're gonna. Actually, we could just get the reference to the score UI. Actually, something that might actually make her, well, no, because the shot gets instantiated, and we don't want the shot to be, every shot that gets spawned to continuously be getting references to the score UI. That's probably not good, or making sure things don't lag and all that. So we're going to want to have a function on the enemy score that's going to be increase score. So public void, well, it's going to be add score, and then that's going to be an empty, or it's not going to have anything in there. And then all this is going to do is call the score UI's add score with this score to be added. So it's still going to have all that, but we're just going to get rid of this. We also don't need the update function at all, so we'll get rid of that as well to be neat and tidy. So now this is going to call the enemy scores, add score, empty brackets, bam. So now, hopefully that should work better. So it seems to be bad to have massive amounts of code to be running on disable if you're planning on having your scene be reloaded or switching scenes and all that. So I guess it's good to keep that in mind. So now I'll test that out by dying, restarting, and no more errors. Now I don't know, like those errors were just happening in the editor. I don't know how much problems that was happening in the actual game. I don't think there really was any, but it's still good to just deal with that anyways. I've had times where I've had an enemy, when it dies, it makes an explosion, which sometimes caused problems, or like, because it was being spawned in the onDisable function. It didn't seem to be that much of a problem until I started transitioning between scenes, and then as soon as you go to a new scene, you instantly just see a bunch of explosions happening in the distance from a bunch of enemies getting despawned. So it's usually good to fix those problems, even if they don't seem like problems right away, because they could be problems down the line. Alright, so finally we got all of that done. We've got our shot we've improved the models of our shot, our enemy shots, and of these asteroid hazards. So I think that'll do it for this episode. Alright, so in the next episode, okay, I haven't decided yet. We'll either be improving the player's model or, actually no. What we'll do is we'll start making the background. We'll just make a space background of some kind, and then we can also do some coding to have a scrolling effect. Because what we'll probably do is, we're not going to have the player and all this be moving forward, we're going to have everything be in the same position, we're just going to have a background that moves that way, and then we'll have it loop around somehow. So we'll figure that out next time. Alright, so that'll be it for this episode. Thank you all so much for watching, and goodbye!